Is there anybody else that has anything to mention, so nothing is forgotten? Okay, thank you. Over to the rabbi.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. I want to wish, of course, again, a Mazel Tov and a happy anniversary to Lori and Howard Novetsky, and a happy birthday to Stephen Budai, Sharon Green, Marion Cardiff, Judy Lipson, John Nussbaum, and Stephanie Lanny Friedman, and of course, Dolores Greenspan. In honor of your birthday, there is a new leaf up on the wall. There's a little yellow arrow pointing to it on our tree of life. And the inscription reads, in honor of Dolores Greenspan celebrating her 90th birthday, December 20th, 2022, may you live to be 120. Sincerely, Nate Fine. And so we want to wish you a Mazel Tov on a leaf on our wall. I want to thank everybody who helped to make our services happen. Of course, our Torah readers, Zamira Weber, Mark Kahn, and Kantor Bletstein, our Haftorah reader, Jeff Kirsch, our floor captain, Debbie and Alan Hitzke, our Torah Gavai, Gordy Veras, our digital Gavai, Mark Bettman. Thank you, everybody. Our Rabbi Kantor led off this morning with discussing something Jewish. Okay, sounds good. Is there? I don't know. Can you discuss anything that's not Jewish? I can find a connection to just about everything. It's okay. Rabbi Kantor led off on Birchot Shachar Psukei Zimra, and Rabbi Rosen take us through the rest of davening. Rabbi Israel Salanter was one of the great rabbinical minds of the 19th century. He's considered the founder or the father of the Musar movement. The Musar movement of Torah study was best known for stressing specifically that interpersonal laws of Torah bear as much weight, if not more, than the ritual obligations. According to Rabbi Salanter, adhering to the ritual aspects of Judaism without developing one's relationships with others and oneself was an unpardonable parody. So one day, Rabbi Salanter was walking through his Beit Midrash, his study hall, where his students were deeply engaged in Talmudic study and chevrutot, partners that sit with each other, trying to squeeze out the lessons, the meaning behind complex texts. Each person sitting with the same partner day after day, week after week. As he made his way through the Beit Midrash, he noticed that Moshe's study partner, Mendel, was late, wasn't there. Moshe was sitting learning on his own, which gave the Rabbi Salanter, an opportunity to check in. So he walked over to Moshe and he said, Moshe, how's Mendel doing? How's his family these days? Moshe responded, Baruch Hashem, I'm sure he's doing fine. The great Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, who was known for his calm but direct demeanor, got a very stern, disappointed look on his face. And he said, what do you mean, Baruch Hashem, you're sure he's doing fine? You sit and learn across from Mendel every day, every week. You look into his eyes to probe the depths of holy texts with each other, and you don't know how his family's doing? This is the essence of Torah. And he walked away. I want you to hold on to that story. Hold on to it. I recently learned about a special group of people who have a very unique skill. They're called super recognizers. They're people who can remember at least 80% of the faces they've ever seen in their lives. This means that even if a person has changed their hair, their age, makeup. A super recognizer has the ability to remember and identify these people they've seen, even if they only saw them for a few seconds. To better understand this unique skill, I went online and I took a test to see how I would rate as a recognizer of faces. The test, which is available to anybody with 20 minutes to spare, is pretty difficult. I scored a 68%, which actually put me in the top 25% of people who took the test. And I can guarantee you that if you asked me to identify a single one of the hundreds of faces they asked me to remember today, I couldn't remember a single one. But these people can. Today, we're designing computers that are trained to do the same thing faster and better. In fact, modern facial recognition software is so fast and about 90% accurate. While there are problems and concerns about this technology, facial recognition is being used to solve crimes and prevent crimes and terror. It's being used to find missing people. It's being used for medical treatments, strengthening domestic and international security, and many other things. But there are some things that computers can't yet do that we as humans can, even if we're not a super recognizer. Specifically, recognizing the emotional state of another person and relating to and empathizing with them as another human being. And this is where a document that is over 3,000 years old can actually teach us something critical. Our Torah portion begins in chapter 37 with the story of Joseph. We open with Joseph's difficult teenage years. He infuriates his brother with descriptions of dreams, all of which seem to end with some image of them bowing down to him. To add to the animosity between Joseph and his brothers comes the fact that Jacob, their father, doesn't hide the fact that Joseph is his favorite son. The Torah is fairly direct in telling us that his brothers hated him, and it uses the word hate over and over again. They come to the conclusion that they need to get rid of him. Seemingly unaware of and completely unable to recognize the disaster brewing within his household, Jacob sends Joseph and says, "Your brothers are pasturing in Shechem. I'll send you to them. Go and see how your brothers are, how the flocks are faring, and bring back word." So he sent him from the valley of Hebron. Now, just to be sure, I went on Google Maps and I said, how long would it take me to walk from the valley of Hebron to Shechem? Because it makes it sound like it's like Farmington Hills to West Bloomfield. It's 80 miles, about a 5-day walk. Maybe if your donkey goes a little faster, a little less, but a 5-day walk. There was no way that Jacob could step in if trouble brewed to protect his son. As we know, at the end of the chapter, the brothers sell Joseph into slavery, tearing up his prized coat, dipping it in the blood of a goat to make it look like Joseph had met a violent end. They take it back to Jacob, presenting the coat to him and say, "Haker na haketonet binchahu imlo." We found this. Please, do you recognize haker? Do you recognize it as your son's tunic or not? What does Jacob say? I just realized how powerful it is when we were reading it. He says, the Torah says, he recognized it. It says, Vayakirah. He recognized the jacket. Did he recognize the sons? Did he recognize the emotional pain? No, he recognized the jacket. The weird thing is that as chapter 37 ends, with Joseph being sold into slavery, and we expect to hear what happens. Chapter 38 starts, and it's a whole different story. It's the story of Judah and Tamar. Judah, another of Joseph's sons, marries, has 3 sons, Er, Onan, and Shelah. He marries the first son, Er, to Tamar, but Er does something bad that's displeasing to God, and he dies. So he says, oh, okay, I'll marry the next son, Onan, to Tamar. Onan does something bad and dies. Judah's getting smart. He says, I see a pattern here. This woman ain't no good. She's a little dangerous for my sons. So he says to Tamar, go over and just wait for the youngest one to grow up. The text makes it crystal clear that he has no intention of ever marrying the youngest to her. He's going to keep her in a permanent state of widowhood. Well, the story goes on, and the season of sheep shearing is there, and Judah is, of course, a owner of sheep. So he's traveling to round up his flock. Tamar, living in a state of widowhood in her father's house, hears that Judah's coming down the road. She dresses herself up in a veil and stands at the side of the road and kind of puts her leg out like this. Well, Judah reads the sign and says, oh, I could have a little fun on the way down to shearing my sheep. So he takes advantage and hires her, not recognizing who she is. She asks for payment for services rendered. He promises her a goat at the end of the shearing season. Tamar, being smart, says, why don't you leave me a deposit, something to know that you're going to fulfill. And Jacob takes his seal, his cord, and his staff, things that he can be recognized by, and says, here you go. Judah comes back after the shearing session, and nobody's ever heard of this prostitute who he owes money to. So he disappears. Of course, 3 months later, Judah is told that Tamar is pregnant. Judah's irate. He says, quote, bring her out, let her be burned. Tamar takes the staff, the seal, and the cord, and says, Haker na. If you recognize those words, recognize this. Judah recognizes them. When Judah sees them and realizes what has happened, he stops the execution with the words, Tzadka mimeni. She's more righteous than me. I recognize them. Of course, after the twins that she's pregnant with are born, the Torah reverts back to the Joseph narrative. Now, the rabbis ask, why on earth is this story of Judah and Tamar just inserted in the middle of the Joseph narrative? As you can guess, the Midrash says that it's inserted there to tell us the importance of recognition. The rabbis understood that it was specifically the lack of recognition of the interpersonal crisis between the sons of Jacob that led Jacob to being asked to simply identify the inanimate coat soaked in goat's blood. And it was the lack of recognition of the pain and suffering of Tamar that led Judah to be in this state of being embarrassed. Jacob could not recognize the crisis going on with his sons. Judah could not recognize the hurt, the pain in Tamar as she was forced to suffer, because they only recognized them as a face, not a person. The recognition that the Midrash is asking us to focus on in our lives is not just the recognition of that super recognizer who can recognize every face, or the software that can identify terrorists purely by facial construct. Rather, the recognition that the Midrash wants us to understand is the recognition that Rabbi Kantor expected from his students as they sat across from each other. This is the recognition that we can have as human beings when we observe not just the face, but the 43 muscles that make up the face when they express sadness, anxiety, or fear, or happiness, excitement, and pleasure. When we recognize those elements of the face and then respond as another human being so that they, the person sitting across from us, knows and recognizes that they're not alone. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.